Welcome to another episode of Global Forum. Today's reflection is on what German theologian Hans Kung has said: there can be no peace among nations without peace among religions. Can interfaith dialogue really contribute to world peace, amity among nations, good relationship among neighbors? That's the question we need to discuss today, we want to discuss today, in its many dimensions and many subtleties, with our two distinguished guests. We have here Father Francis Tiso, who is a director of Interfaith Dialogue within the Catholic Church, and we also have Ahmad Al-Sanusi, who is Director of Communications and Community Affairs with ISNA, Islamic Society of North America. And both of them have been involved with this enterprise for a long time. I welcome you both. Father Tiso, let me ask you a simple question for people who may not be familiar with this enterprise. What is interfaith dialogue?
This is when people get together to talk about religious differences and similarities, right? It could be as simple as that, a gathering around a kitchen table, or it could be as complicated as choosing specialists from the different religious traditions and gathering over a period of time to work out more complex issues. It can take a great many forms. Of course, it could even simply be living in a neighborhood productively where there was a diversity of religions and occasionally gathering for social events. So there is a vast gamut of possibilities here. Usually what I like to say is that interreligious dialogue is when the representatives of a religious community get together at that cutting edge of exchange of ideas that is productive and at the service of the communities from which they come and which they represent.
Okay, productive dialogue at the service of their respective communities. Is that your experience?
Of course it is. Our very example with the Catholic Church itself, we held an interfaith, or I call it interreligious dialogue, for the last 9 years. Scholars from the Muslim community and from the Catholic Church get together and discuss issues to bring the community together. They discuss issue has to do with revelations. They discuss issue has to do with family issue, family values, and even with the violence issues that is in both religions. And I think this kind of dialogue, when it go down to the masses, to the grassroots level, it will give the community a level of comfort, how to deal with your neighbors, how to arrange a joint, programs and projects that benefit the society at large, regardless specific religion.
So therefore, it is partly looking at religion as culture and making neighbors understand each other's culture, if I understand you correctly.
Religion, of course, in the pluralistic society like the U.S. society, you will find people that adhere to certain religions, and you will find people that with no religion. So you have to find a common ground to bring all the humanity together.
But it seems like in an interfaith dialogue, one also looks at the notion of Irish Catholics as opposed to German Catholics, where they not only have a component in common, but there are uncommon components that they have to discover about each other. So if I understand you correctly, then there are 2 or 3 main components of interfaith dialogue. One is the element of discovery of mutuality. Second is the aspect of problem solving. And third could be the aspect of mutual benefit. Would you say those are the aspects that are available, Father Tiso?
Yes, one of the areas that's very important is that since, for the most part, even leadership is not well informed about the basic beliefs of the other religions, these provide an opportunity even to learn the basics, right? And to learn the basics in a way that is congenial to developing a relationship, so that it's not just reading a book about Islam, but actually speaking with Muslims and getting their perspective on things and seeing how, for example, I said this years ago, what you read about Buddhism in the Pali scriptures and how Buddhism is lived in Sri Lanka or in Thailand can be quite different. And so someone who had only done one and not the other would not really understand the whole picture of Buddhism. And the same thing is true, I think, in many, many settings. You have the same problem. Judaism in the Old Testament versus Judaism as it is lived today. Catholicism is an enormously complicated religion, so it's better to know a variety of Catholics in order to be able to talk about Catholicism well educate about Catholicism if you are not a Catholic, and to engage in constructive projects with Catholics so that you know how Catholicism really works. Think of the famous problems of papal infallibility. It doesn't apply to everything the Pope says. You have to know those things through contact and through sharing.
Right.
Very well said. While I appreciate the precision with which you answered the question, but is it the only reason people engage in interfaith dialogue because they want to get better understanding and have ecumenical outreach, or are there other motivations that people? What are some of the main motivations for which people are engaging in interfaith dialogue?
Well, I think solving problems, I think it is a main motivation. I will give you an example. For example, the issue of torture. This particular issue has created a huge problem, not only in the United States, even in the entire globe. Our experience at the Islamic Society of North America in December of 2005, we helped to organize a conference just to talk about the issue of torture and human rights. And that conference, in fact, was able to produce an organization called National Religious Campaign Against Torture. This organization, now it is an interreligious organization. It has now 120 religious organizations, evangelical, Southern Baptist, all kind of religion. I mean, Protestant and Catholic and others, because the cause itself is a very noble cause. They wanted to eradicate torture. And the grassroots organization now, we are able to have an executive director. We are able to hire 4 or 5 people. We are able to open headquarters in Washington within only 18 months. So I think because of the support from the community, interreligious community, the organization is moving forward. Now, only 18 months, you have a powerful organizations, even getting award from the United Nations. So I think because of the religious motivations, we are solving a particular problem when the interfaith or interreligious people get together.
So will it be a correct impression by my part that interreligious dialogue is becoming an important instrument of the emerging international civil society? Instead of settling issues by force or by legal decree or by institutional enforcement, this is a spiritual and a moral dimension on which things are solved. So it is like, it will be akin to applying moral force to solve political problems and social problems. Will you say that's the case?
You have an organization like the World Conference of Religions for Peace, which has been in existence now a number of decades, doing exactly this. And it provides a kind of interface between policymakers and the general communities of religions, people on the streets who are believers, who are practicing their faiths. Now, a recent example similar to the anti-torture movement within the United States would be the Six Powers discussions around North Korea and nuclear policy in the Far East. And that is being spearheaded on the spiritual level by World Conference of Religions for Peace based in Japan. So you have Japan, North and South Korea, Russia, China, and the United States working together, that is, religious leaders from those countries, working together to try to direct or influence policy makers on the one hand, and also deliver a message to the general public. This is the kind of way that we work. This idea of an interface between the international community and communities of faith is a crucial one, so that ideas will be accepted, that ideas will be debated on the local level and become part of the currency of thought.
What about skeptics who would say, in many cases,